Good. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm Representative Shay Sortwell, representing the 2nd Assembly District, just outside of Green Bay, De Pere, down to Two Rivers. And then there's this Representative Ortiz Velez that's joining me. She's been my co-author and working with me on this project. We are the two main authors on this bill. We've been working on this for quite a while now. So on the issue of cannabis, on the issue of marijuana, this is an issue that deeply divides America, deeply divides our state. It's kind of a microcosm of politics in general these days. There's a lot of disagreement as to where we should be going with a whole lot of topics. So trying to bring together different areas of the state and different political perspectives can be difficult on any issue, and particularly on this one. I know I've spoken with some really hardliners, want to continue to make sure that this is completely illegal, want to leave it at felony levels for everything, really crack down hard on the usage of it. And then we got some people on the other end of the political spectrum that want full legalization, want to regulate it like alcohol. I believe this bill that we have put together does our best to kind of pull together the best of both worlds, try to bring together all perspectives across the state to try to find some sort of middle ground where we can move forward. So on a very high level, and I'll get into the details in a little while after Sylvia speaks here in a second, but on a really high level, what this does is change the way we look at marijuana. So it leaves it completely illegal. It's still against the law, but it changes how we enforce it, and it changes how we consider it as a society, as a state. So before I go into the details as to what this bill specifically does, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Representative Ortiz Velez and let her talk about why she thinks this bill is so important, why we think this bill is so important.
Thank you, Representative Sortwell. And my name is Representative Ortiz Velez. I represent the 8th Assembly District in Milwaukee County on the near south side. And the area I represent actually has the highest deaths anywhere from overdoses in our state. And we know too many people are dying and suffering because they don't have access to a plant which is considered medicine in more than 2/3 of the states in the United States. Instead, we criminalize people for trying to get their medicine. We even criminalize our veterans, many of whom use marijuana for PTSD. The state of Wisconsin does not have a medical marijuana program, but even if Wisconsin did have a medical marijuana program, many of our heroes won't see a doctor to obtain a prescription, and many people don't have access to medical insurance or the money to pay to see a doctor to get a prescription. We know that we have burdened our criminal justice system. When we think about all the people who have received extended sentences in our state, it is costing taxpayers in Wisconsin millions and millions of dollars a year, unnecessarily, for small amounts of medicine, of marijuana. Additionally, this bill is really important because what we have currently in our state is currently under Chapter 59. Counties and municipalities are allowed, if they want, to regulate up to 25 grams, which this bill actually turns it into 28, so that's another plus, which makes sense because that's going off of normal weights and measures of ounces and half ounces. We know that by putting this bill into effect, that we can get rid of that patchwork at the local ordinances in different areas. So we can set a standard across the state. And the standard is up to 14 grams. It will be a fine instead of a criminal charge. And so to have, that standard across our state is also very important. Additionally, we know that felony charges can be a barrier to employment and to housing. And we know that marijuana is, what we should think about is whether or not we believe that small possession of marijuana really rises to a felonious act. It does not. And finally, I would like to say that this bill provides a way for employers to have the ability to hire more people, especially at a time when our labor pool is short. So that's what I wanted to add. I look forward for this bill having a hearing and to hear the people of Wisconsin get to weigh in on this matter. Thank you.
And I'll go ahead and just go into some more details as to what the bill does before we take a few questions here. So Sylvia, Representative Ortiz Velez already went into some of the details, but basically what it does for the listeners, for people around the state, so they understand what this does. We basically set up 3 different classifications of how we're going to deal with marijuana possession in the state of Wisconsin as opposed to what current law does. So what we're going to do is everything under half an ounce, 14 grams, will be a civil forfeiture similar to a speeding ticket. So it's still against the law. We're still not encouraging its usage, but it's not going to lead to any kind of criminal offense. Secondly, between half an ounce and an ounce, that is going to stay at current law, although we do bump it up, as she mentioned, from 25 grams to 28 grams, because right now at 25 grams it becomes a felony. We're going to bump that from 25 to 28 because that's what I understand. People here in America don't use the metric system. They use the British imperial system. So they buy them by the half ounce, buy it by the ounce, etc. And so what we go ahead and do is that would still remain then at a misdemeanor, but would still not be a felony, which is the greatest barrier to employment. And then everything above 28 would still remain under current law. In addition, what we do is for mere possession under that ounce, we get rid of the repeat offense felony bump. So right now, if you're in a subsequent offense after your first offense, it can jump to a felony. We get rid of that. So just like if you get a second speeding ticket or a third speeding ticket, you get the same penalty time and again. This would do that. In addition, because this is, I believe, a workforce development bill, we put in place workforce protections, liability protections for employers who choose not that you want to do this in pre-employment testing. And I think that's critically important to note that this is not a partisan issue. As a matter of fact, on the initial release we have about a dozen representatives and senators from both parties overall. I think 11 total we have right now. And then several others that's told me they will co-sponsor it as soon as the bill is released. And I also know, I saw an advertisement the other day it was really funny. It was you could tell the company that was advertising was a very politically conservative organization. It talked about things like not requiring vaccinations and not wanting liberals to apply at their workplace, not encouraging that necessarily. But at the same time, in the list of all these different things that this employer said, he said, in that advertisement, it said, no pre-employment drug testing. So this is something that employers are moving towards anyways, and this provides them a level of liability protection. So we hope that this bill will move forward. We think it's a middle ground that everybody can agree on. It establishes that standard across the state, as Representative Ortiz Velez mentioned, and we've had good discussions with many people in law enforcement, many people in the business community, and we have not had any real pushback from anybody. A lot of them can't quite decide what they want to do with it because it is a little bit unique, and it's a middle ground approach that nobody has really tried yet. So with that, Representative Ortiz Velez and I would be happy to take any questions you have.
Have you guys spoke to leadership? What are their thoughts about those proposals?
Well, I'll speak to my Republican leadership, and then Representative Ortiz Velez can speak to hers. I have brought up the overall idea to my leadership. I can't speak to the Senate leadership overall. I haven't had much contact with them. But the Assembly leadership, they didn't give me a no, and I'll take that as a win. They didn't give me a no. They didn't give me a yes. They took it under advisement. So I think there are a number of people in leadership, a number of people in Republican politics as in general, that realize that there is a shifting position on this issue in the Republican Party, in Republicans overall. I mean, there was just a Gallup poll that came out just a couple days ago that mentioned that 50% of Republicans actually support full legalization. That's not what this bill does. Once again, it tries to run a middle-of-the-ground approach, but there is certainly a significant amount of support on my side to have some sort of reform on this. As I pointed out, I think I have 7 Republicans right now initially on this bill introducing it, and then I expect several more will jump on as soon as once the co-sponsorship memo is out and circulated for a bit. But go ahead.
Thank you, Representative Sirtwell. Well, it's easy for me to say that our leadership supports any measures that moves this issue forward in our state, and any issues that reflect the will of the people.
Have you spoke to the governor's office or the governor about the proposal?
Not yet. Not yet.
Now, as y'all know, legislation starts with the legislature. So Representative Ortiz Velez have been working hard. We've been working hard together on this for months and months. We somewhat recently brought the Senate into this conversation. And we hope to get some traction on this. Whether it goes through this session, well, that remains to be seen. But I would really hope we can at least get a hearing, and so we can really discuss what impact this would have on the state as a whole.
Is this an idea somewhere else in another state that they're done, or, sometimes constituents bring you ideas, I guess, where did you start compiling this?
Well, I am not aware of another state that quite takes this approach. Maybe there is one that I'm not aware of. The starting point, to be honest, was a bill that I introduced early in the session and also last session, but it wasn't even my bill originally. It was actually former Representative Adam Jarko had the first idea of a limited decriminalization bill, but that was just 10 grams, and it did nothing else. And we reintroduced that bill to keep the conversation alive, but it's also a much more expansive bill to try to have much more positive impact on the state. So that was our starting point, but we took it far beyond that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. So kind of it was a marriage of both of our bills in a way, because I was working on a standalone just to remove the subsequent offense. Mm-hmm. And then things just kind of developed from there and gotten better.
And the liability protection was something, the liability protection for employers was something Representative Bowen and I worked together on last session. So we tied together a number of different ideas on this.
Yeah.
Is there any, obviously you mentioned this doesn't include medicinal use. Is there any sort of a hope that this would be, or thoughts that this could be like a launching point into that discussion?
You want to?
I mean, I hope that the will of the people in our state is listened to by all the lawmakers in our state. My hope is that that we don't at least criminalize people trying to get access to their medicine. Of course, I hope for a medicinal program in our state, but I also realize even if we had a medical program, we still need to do this. This still needs to be done because many of our veterans are not going to go to a doctor to get a prescription. A lot of people don't have health insurance. So how would they even be able to, even if we had a medical program, which is my hope that we do. But we still need to think about all the others that would fall under this category. Do we really want to criminalize people trying to get access to their medicine?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's the existing fine for under 14 grams in Milwaukee County?
Oh, that's a good question. So under our current state laws, each county under Chapter 59, if they want to, they don't have to, they can regulate up to 25 grams with a fine in lieu of criminal charges. In Milwaukee County, I'm proud to say that I am the county board supervisor who just 6 months ago was able to reduce the fine up to 25 grams for possession to $1
So
plus court costs.
wouldn't this then increase that fine?
Yes, it would. It would, but it would still allow counties to regulate from 14 to 28. And we've had these discussions with many people, and I can tell you. To create a standard across our state, part of the problem is people in Milwaukee, if they leave the county and they're in another county, now they don't really know that the rule only applies to just this county. So there's a lot of confusion there. So when people are confused about how the laws apply within patchworks, that makes it harder. So, I've had discussions with cannabis advocates. I've had this discussion with numerous people. We understand it's worth a trade-off, and that's coming from the person who actually made it $1 in Milwaukee County. And the repeat offense also. We know that for that reason alone, the damage that that small amounts of marijuana is being considered as a felony in our state, it's worth the trade-off. It really is.
Yeah. The thing to remember in this,
The cost.
The thing to remember in this bill is nobody's getting a giant win in this bill.
Right.
If you think this is a win for hardline. Let's make it completely illegal. Let's continue to treat it like a criminal offense. People, they're not winning in this bill. If you're looking at the idea of let's completely legalize and treat it like alcohol, and that's where you're trying to go, yeah, we're not there on this bill either. This is trying to create a standard across the state that, generally speaking, we can all come to agreement on. And yes, there's going to be some areas of the state that are going to have the financial penalty raised, as in Milwaukee County. There's going to be some counties where their fines are going to be lowered. I talked to some sheriffs who right now they have fines in their county for, say, $500 that they're enforcing. Well, this bill would not allow that to happen. So it's creating an equal standard across the state. And happy to have Senator Taylor join us. She's one of our Senate co-authors. So If you have any questions for her, feel free to, or if you have any thoughts on the bill overall you'd like to share.
I'm certain that, Representative, I'm certain that you and Representative Ortiz have said that all that needs to be done. There is no question that there are costs to our law enforcement. There's costs to our people capacity. And yes, and the connection that it has to people being able to be productive in our state when we oversaturate our state in mass incarceration.